Hey there everyone, it's Vickie Howell here to talk to you about how to read a crochet chart. All right, so here's the scoop. First of all, a crochet chart is really cool because it is literally the blueprint for how your project will ultimately look. So let me show you what that means. So this is the On Point Shawlette. It's a little kerchief from Yarnier that I designed. And you can see all of the individual stitches, obviously, in this beautiful yarn. But this particular piece, flip it around how I had it originally, is worked from the top center outward. So if you think about wearing it, with this down your back, which is not actually how I'd wear it, but let's just pretend this would be your center back neck. All right, so let's talk about what that looks like on this chart. So first of all, just setting it down, you can see that it is a pretty exact representation, which is really cool to have that visual. If you think about a blueprint for like a house or any sort of architecture, it really is the same thing. And many people prefer to only work from charts. And then there's others that find them confusing and only want to work with text. So what's cool is when you can have the combination like we do in this particular pattern, and most will. All right, so let's talk about this. So this is pretty much a literal representation of this project, excluding the repeats, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. So let's start with the components of a chart. All charts will have a key, and this is, no pun intended, but key to your understanding. So here, and this chart's a little bit smaller. If you have a digital version, you'll be able to zoom in, but in any chart, not just the one for this particular project, you'll be able to, take a look. And the symbols are generally pretty standard, even from country to country, but it really does help to have a chart to make sure. So the chain is a teeny tiny, I don't know if you can see that, oval, and that is standard across the board. For this chart, this little T is a half double crochet. The T with an extra little line under it or through the middle at an angle is a double crochet. And then the treble or the triple crochet, this is a little bit harder to see, has two of those little dashes. So the double has a dash, the treble has two dashes. All right, so for this particular project, as I said, you're starting at the beginning with a chain, and so you can see that these are the chains right here. Now I mentioned earlier that there's a repeat. Well, first let me just talk about rows. So this piece is worked in rows, not rounds, it's flat. So we've made, and often is the case, every row a different color just for ease of seeing. But either way, each of these, there'll be a stitch for every a symbol for every stitch in each row. So the black one, these are all chains, and then you can see there's these double crochets because we see that one little dash line, double crochets, two chains, double crochet, and then the chains there. So that's row 1. 2 is blue in this chart. So that means that you're only working with these. And then 3, 4, and you can always tell where you're starting. Obviously you're flipping the piece over, but the beginning of the row will always be where you see the chains at the beginning, right? Because you're at the beginning of every row in crochet, you chain to create the height of whatever stitch you'll be working in. All right, and then I spoke earlier about how this piece was representative of everything but the repeats. So for this particular chart, you can repeat rows 10 through 13 as many times as the pattern calls for the smaller, or you can literally do this repeat until the piece is as big as you like. So there's no need to chart out the rest because you're just repeating again and again and again. Okay, the last thing I want to go over when talking about charts is how they translate from written to charts. Okay, so I think for this, I am going to go with row 2, just because it's a little bit easier and we're not dealing with the foundation chains or whatever. All right, so let's look at the instructions. So the instructions for this say chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So we'll go over to our chart, and we are on round 2, that's the blue one. We can see chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Counts as a double crochet. we can see why. There's a visual why we're doing that right there. It's because it creates that height that you need for the double crochet, which, if we go back to our directions, will be the next stitch called for. So this actually calls for 8 double crochets in the chain 4 space. So let's scoot over here. You can see from row 1 below that there are 4 chains right there. So that is the space. And then you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those double crochets in that chain space. So that's a direct translation. All right, and then from there, we are going to create the center motif. And this will stay standard in most pieces like this, where you're working from the center out, where you've got basically a spine. The center stays really consistent. So we are going to do a double crochet, and you can see that here. And then we are going to chain 2, and then we do another double crochet in the chain. And you can see, and that here's that chain. You're skipping 2 chains, I forgot to say that. You're chaining 2, skipping 2, and then everything will be mirrored on the opposite side. So we'll work 8 more double crochets, so you can see all those here, and that chain 4 space, you can see that here, and then you'll end with a double crochet in the called for chain at the end of the row. And then you'll turn and you'll be ready to start here for row 3. And that's really all there is to it. I love charts. It's one of my favorite things about working in crochet is how beautifully something translates from something illustrative to this beautiful textile piece. All right, thanks.